Gareth, we saw your session earlier today on creative play in the attacking third. How important is the creative player in the modern game?
Well, I think in any era it's been important to have creative players. One of the things that amused me about the group of players I had was I asked them how many of them were creative, and only three put their hands up, and yet they'd all played brilliantly in the first session and tried things and worked their way out of tight areas as individuals or played 1-2s, and so I saw creativity from all of them. But the perception or their own perception was that they weren't. All I tried to do was create an environment for them to express themselves, really. I'm not convinced you actually coach creativity. I think players will do things naturally that are creative. I think you've got to try and create the environment for them to be able to do that within.
And like you said, the players that perhaps didn't put their hand up, maybe didn't think they were creative, how difficult a task is it to change that mentality in a player's mind?
Well, I just think sometimes it's allowing them to see what creative play is, and them recognising that a lot of the things they do in the game are creative. And I think it doesn't matter which position you play, you'll be in positions on the field where you've got to come up with a solution and get yourself out of a tight area, or play a pass through a tight area or an individual piece of skill. And players will do it without thinking and not consider it to be creative play. So I think we do tend to focus on attacking players when we talk about creativity, and I think we've seen across the course of the 3 days here that isn't the sole remit of creativity.
How can the FA work with clubs to help nurture those creative players?
Well, by events like this that engage coaches, really. I think for creative players to succeed, they need the environment to try things, to feel that mistakes don't matter, and the further you go down in age groups, the more they should be prepared to try things, and the less fear there should be. And then as you get older, naturally I think there's a little bit more fear in players, and so as a coach you've got to try and relieve them of that fear. I think the youngest kids will just go and do things naturally, and there is no fear, there's no history of failing, and there's no understanding that failure could lead to being left out of the team or something like that. So as they get older, you've got to work harder as a coach maybe to create that environment.
This weekend we've heard a lot from people from different countries, other sports, even the theatre, about how they nurture their own talent and how they develop creativity. But how important is it for us to recognise the good work that the FA is doing as well?
Yeah, well, I think it's important that we always reflect on what we do, and that we always have a desire to try and improve. But whenever you travel, you pick up new ideas, but you also see a lot of things that confirm that what we do is right. And we judge everything on results of the senior team, which is an incredibly competitive environment, and it's always cup football. And just because we haven't won things at senior level for a long time doesn't mean that everything that happens here is wrong. So, of course, there's always room for improvement at every age group and with everything that you try to do. But I think people would have seen this weekend as well that sometimes when you travel abroad, there isn't a lot different. There isn't a magic ingredient on the coaching pitch in particular. Very often sessions are quite simple, and you maybe have to be careful how much information that you give players and how difficult you make the sessions in terms of the structure of them.
How exciting a time is it for you and the other coaches as we build forward?
Well, I think we're in a period where there's an acceptance that everybody here wants to try and improve things and change perhaps the way that we work and the way that we ask the teams to play. So that joined up thinking is important. If we're not consistent throughout our age group teams at international level, then people could rightly turn around and say, well, you're talking about a philosophy of play, but I see a disconnect between one age group and another. So the way that we coach and the way that the teams are asked to play has to be very closely aligned. I think individual coaches will all have their own personalities, that there'll be slight tweaks to what they do, and we've got to keep that individuality, but the general principles of how we play should be the same.